Good morning. This is Tom, Negotiating with Jesus. I just had a talk the other day with Paul, and I'm trying to establish some kind of entrance into this little corner. So it's morning. This is my time that I love. I'm a morning person. I'm not ready for work yet. I'm going to get dressed and go to work sometime after I drop my girl off at school. So I'm an old guy with two young kids, an 11 and a 16-year-old girl. So pray for me, pray for them. So the corner, I've been following Paul, and probably like everyone, Peterson, and then Paul, and then Vervaeke and Peugeot, and I've been a video watcher for ages, a content consumer, and always also playing with content creation. So I gave my story. Paul said he would attach that to the latest discussion. I didn't feel like it was a great discussion because I didn't, Paul's eyes didn't light up like some of his guests. He can really run with good discussion. So I wanted to be like that. It didn't really work out. I might have to be enter the corner as a side channel because the hierarchies bind and blind, whatever. So what I wanted to do, I have two videos to do. One, I'm going to give kind of a layout of what my plan is. I know Christian Baxter had come in and he's trying to enter, and I'm not going to enter like that. I'm going to enter in a very tiptoe, casual, non-important way, but I want to do a channel that's a little different. I want to do things about in my life, and I'm going to give a little more testimony. In my life, I've been an average player who's embodied. So when I talked to Paul the first time, my first testimony was about a guy who got involved in drugs. A tragic death near me, but not in my personal life. It was once removed. A death that was so tragic that it shifted my world long enough for me to, as a seeker of wisdom and truth, as someone who had met Jesus in some strange way, I became established in a church, and that was the change that I needed to leave drugs and all these distractions behind, but that didn't mean that I'm not a distracted type person. So it just means the drug challenge was over. It was over in a way that AA or NA, Narcotics Anonymous, they want to get you to a point where you have traded another community, a community that is based on not drugs, not alcohol. It is only a community of recovery. So I'm a recovered person. I became a church person, but very much the same personality. So now, in this point in my life, I've gone through several cycles of crisis because, like every good story, that's what it is. The hero doesn't The truth is the hero doesn't live happily ever after. The Cinderella story, which if you watch the Kurt Vonnegut video on how to write a story, the end of his stories is this ideal that it's heaven, happily for the rest of eternity. But Cinderella is just a girl. Prince Charming is just a boy. And they will have great struggles ahead of them. You just stop thinking about the story. Oh, happily ever after. Oh, good. And then the story ends, and they don't have a real life. If you do have a real life, the story continues to ebb and flow. So my story of the first death, and then becoming a church person and leaving, and the first death is a shocking death of someone who's loved and also the shocking death of drug abuse, and the shocking life of the church. And then I live in that world, and I'd always loved music. I'd attempted to be in a band, but I'm not that driven. So my bands have not been good. I'm average, but music will be a big part of this channel, because art, whatever it is, regular people need to be starving artists. You need to put art into the world, and it's not just the great architects who are going to build a cathedral. That can't be the salvation of the world. So that's going to be this hierarchy. And human saviors. Building a cathedral does not save the world. It points to something. You doing little cathedrals in your life, that's the true artistic work. The work is salt. It's not cathedrals. But that's a philosophy video, a wisdom video, which is, this little corner's main diet is this search for wisdom. But what Grimm is trying to do is say, embody. Is this what we are? We're talking faces on a screen. Don't you have a real way to make this, to realize wisdom, to embody it, to whatever. So anyway, the church. So meeting people in the church and saying, this is my new community. You meet people and then you do things there. And it was start another band, and it was a Christian cover band. So I did Newsboys songs, if you know them, and Jeff Moore in the Distance, and became the second iteration of a cover band. And three great partners, and one especially driven partner was a young woman named Karen, who played keyboards. And the strange combination of me, who's way too unruly, and Karen, who's way too disciplined, leveled out into some kind of workable, functioning band that could do reasonable covers, not great, but fun. And then we played in the local churches. That went about 10 years. So my story has breaks where somebody close to me, but not in my personal, not family, perishes. And it's the tragedy that shakes you. It changes, or it slows you down. It stops you. That now you have to decide, what is life if somebody important dies? So Paul tags my initial conversation with him on the end of my current conversation. That was the end of the life of Shelley, who to me was beauty that died. What if beauty dies in your world? You have to reevaluate how it is that beauty can be destroyed. So Jesus in some sense, says, no, I'm the one who won't be destroyed. Even destruction doesn't stop me. It gives you some kind of hope, and that's what I found in the church. The next thing was I became a Christian musician, and it was Christian. And if you think Christian art sucks, so what? All kinds of art sucks. I don't care if you think, oh, that's not good enough. Christians don't make good enough art. Shut up. And then make some art. Try it. It's not that easy. And average art is the kind of art that carries the world. I haven't seen the Mona Lisa. I haven't seen the Sistine Chapel. It doesn't carry me at all. I go to a church that looks like a building. No, sunsets are the kind of art that carries the world. God's art. Human art does not carry the world. The greatest art is done by people who are secular and pointing to something. I will use Mariah Carey as my example of art, but I have to keep moving here. This is just my story. So become a youth group leader because I'm now a church person. I'm a little quiet because my daughter, it's 4:30 or 5. I don't know what time it is. I get up super early because I love the morning and I do my routines. I'll talk about that in another video. So my daughter is asleep over there. My 11-year-old, because now I'll get to being divorced. I'm now a divorced man with 2 beautiful children, and marriage was the greatest thing that ever happened to me because I always call her my wife, and then the guys at the shop say, "You're what?" My ex. They won't allow me to live in a fantasy world. My wife, the 2 were made one, and the most beautiful thing in the world that happens in the world is people. 2 little people were born. So that's part of my story, and I didn't mention that in either talk with Paul. It would have probably made it a better talk. So, Christian band, church man, 10 years. And then in youth work, I hated the idea, and this subconsciously or something, I hated the idea that as a young person, I took a wrong turn, got involved in drugs at 14-ish, because that's when you get involved with drugs, and then took many with me. I hated that somehow no one was saying, "Hey, did you know there's church youth groups? There's ways to enjoy the world without drugs." So I wanted to work with students. I wanted them to know that that's a tragic error. So testimony, telling your story. I made mistakes. That's the biggest thing you can do. It isn't, "I'm really smart." That's not what you should do. You should say, like Socrates, "I'm really dumb." Embrace that. Embrace that. No one's going to believe that you're smart, and you're not going to be able to prove it to them because you might not be. And that's part of the lesson with me talking to Paul. Youth group. For years, this woman in the band, Karen, she did VBS, which is Vacation Bible School. We would do things in skits and plays. We would work with students. And it was a youth ministry. We played for churches. They'd have a night where they had a band come over. And the kids, it's all about kids. Church is about kids. And if kids fade, it becomes about old people. But it's also a collection of wisdom. Anyway, I'm working with students, and then I changed churches because of convenience. I'm driving to a church that's a little far away. I visit a church that's close, and a good pastor sees somebody visiting and says, "I'd like to catch you. I'd like you to be here." He thought I could be involved in youth ministry with that church. And then I became the youth pastor, a volunteer, so I wasn't a pastor, and started leading youth group. I was only a helper in the youth group at the other church, but youth is my thing. And it's what Grimm is hinting at. What is paintball for Jesus? It's talking to kids where they are. I'm like, man, I'll do that all day. I'll do that all day. And it's not necessarily doing Bible quizzes and saying, you need to not be where you are. It is playing paintball with them and tag and letting them see a life that's been changed and plant seeds. For goodness sakes, to think that you take a child and you turn them into a large oak tree by yelling at them, you must memorize scripture because you'll become a stout oak. The children are not swimming. They're swimming in Christian water. So Tom Holland, yeah, right? But they don't know it. And there's some wooing, some leading, but not forcing. That's my version of what evangelism is, and it's the soft, or not the steep slope, the gradual slope, whatever. Man, 15 minutes in. So I'm a youth worker, and I love the church, and I love kids. I love them. They're the ones that you can't take your eyes off of, because kids are somehow innocent, and there's glory, and even the bad ones aren't trying to be bad. So the second big thing that happens, because my life is punctuated with loss, is Brandon. He's my kid. He's not mine. I'm a bachelor. I don't know what to do with women. So in 2002, the first death in my county was Brandon. He died in a car crash. He was my kid. He always came to youth. So that kind of loss is just, it stops you, and it makes you consider, what is it when the good kid dies? I don't know. It stops you. It makes you consider that you might not be that smart or that good, because you're not dead. The good kid is dead. You're still alive, so that's survivor's guilt. I don't know what it is. But, yeah. And I could cry every time about Brandon. I'm a big baby. So Shelley, I could cry every time about Shelley. Then I could cry about Brandon. So as a youth leader in the church, happy as a clam, just living large, loving life. I had to work like a regular Joe. I did hard work. I've always done hard work. I couldn't figure out how to get into white collar work. I'm blue collar. And then Brandon. And then I didn't know that I wanted to do youth ministry. I can't lose my kid. That can't be what youth ministry is. So it was the biggest funeral I'd ever seen. And all my students, all of a sudden I had this giant youth group. Not really, I can't manage a giant youth group, but at a funeral, every student came to that meeting. A funeral's that's a big youth group meeting. So anyway, no, I stink at leading large groups. I can lead very small groups. 3 or 4, 1 or 2. Brandon and I had youth group, and his friend Zach. The 3 of us had youth group all the time. Yeah, I'm terrible at this, but I'll do it anyway. I don't care. So that's the end of that story. I do continue into church because this is my world. And even if it shakes, even if there's an earthquake, I'll rebuild. I have no other option. Jesus is my option. He caught me. I don't see any good options out there. I love Paul. Love you guys. Love students. But no one can stand. Jesus seems to be the character in all the world that can't be shaken. I'll take Jesus. And whatever you want to make of that. So the end of scene 2 is a church man who was born into the church through the loss of Shelley, and then has to decide what to do with the church in the loss of Brandon. So then I'll get into part 3 in I don't know, shortly. So, yeah, my stories. Okay, I'll talk to you again, YouTube. I got to get dressed and I got to play my guitar. I'll be doing a lot of music talk in this channel. This is Negotiating with Jesus. Tom, out.